Vasistha continued. The expression, in the beginning, used as if there were such a beginning of such a creation of even a notion, is meant only for the purpose of instruction. It is not true. We often hear how all this arose as a notion in the beginning, in the mind of the Creator, Brahma. And each time we've been told this, I've been at pains to point out that this is not a process which happens in time. The beginning is right here, right now. The Big Bang is happening right here, right now, moment to moment. And now we have this corroboration. In the beginning, automatically casts our mind back into a remote era, an unfathomably remote era, which takes us away from here. It takes us away from now. So that's a conventional story which we have to bring back to the present moment. So this notion, creation of even a notion, will be referring to the notion that arose in the mind of the Creator, but which we have to understand as the creative aspect of consciousness. The notion which arises in consciousness, but which is non-different from consciousness itself, is known as jiva when it is outgoing to perceive the object. As soon as we start perceiving something external, we have the notion of selfhood. You cannot have the notion of other without the notion of self. As soon as you start thinking in terms of an individual identity, a jiva, then you've got the notion of the external world. So as soon as you start perceiving objects, as soon as you start thinking that there are objects out there independently of here, and these objects have their own independent substance, then this is selfhood. This is jiva. Notions of self and world are not independent. In fact, they're totally dependent. And the notion is consciousness. What is the substance of a notion? The notion which arises in consciousness, but which is non-different from consciousness itself. All notions are clearly of the nature of consciousness. This notion or concept has several names and descriptions. So this is expanding from the previous chapter in response to Rama's question about how the natural order arises. And it arises because of the sense of self, the sense of selfhood, the limited sense of selfhood. This notion or concept has several names and descriptions. Because through it consciousness becomes a living entity, it is known as jiva. Because it is conscious of the object, it is known as consciousness, citta. So this is just simply awareness when you're aware of something. Because it designates all things as this is this, it is known as buddhi. This is the designating intelligence. Because it thinks of concepts and percepts, it is known as the mind, or manas. Because it considers itself I am, it is known as ego sense. This is ahamkara. Because it is rich in consciousness, it is known as citta, which is here described as the psyche. Because it forms a network of firm notions, it is known as the puryashtaka. Because it arises in the beginning of creation, it is known as prakriti. And this is sometimes just called nature. This is consciousness regarded as process and giving rise to the insentient world order, nature. Because it is not known, that is, it ceases. When one attains enlightenment, it is known as ignorance, or avidya. But this is what gives rise to it in the first place. It's not knowing, it's non-wisdom. Its essential nature is one of non-wisdom. All these descriptions are based on the existence of the subtle body, and this is the ativahika. Though this illusory world appearance has thus been described, it does not exist. Now you can look into these terms, explore them. If you study Hindu philosophy or Hindu metaphysics, you'll come across these terms. But the point is, as the Yoga Vasistha does with all aspects of Hinduism, they are all essentially stepping stones to self-enquiry, to vichara, to realization of the true nature of the self. All these things are limited aspects of the self. There are limiting aspects of consciousness. They're not different things. We don't have to try and fit them into a system. We just step over them to realization of pure consciousness. So we're told that all these things are the ativahika body, the subtle body, and the rest of the chapter is concerned with that.